Hello. Welcome to my channel. In this video, we will talk about some basic abbreviations and acronyms used in the LitRPG genre. While all of them are used in LitRPG books, some of these acronyms are used in actual video games such as the massive multiplayer online role-playing games also known as MMORPGs. Before we start, kindly like the video and click that subscribe button to receive updates on our posts. Our first abbreviation is PC, and it is known as player character. A player character or playable character (PC) is a made-up character in a role-playing or video game whose actions are chosen by a player of the game rather than the rules of the game. A player character may sometimes be based on a real person. However, a player generally makes or chooses a character that may be nothing like themselves. The character is usually of a race and class often not real, such as zombie, berserker, mage, elf, or cleric, and each with their own strengths and weaknesses. The skills of the characters, such as magic and fighting ability, are quantified, which can be made better as the gamer plays through the game and gains experience points through doing quests or fighting enemies. It is important to note that the LitRPG world is not always a game world but can be a real world where game dynamics are in play. Next on the list is HP. HP is known as hit points or health points. HP shows the health of the player character. It is also the amount of damage or hits the player character can take before the character dies. Warriors, tanks and other related classes with high constitution, physical damage output often have high HP. The next is MB. This is known as mana bar. Mana is a LitRPG characteristic inherent in player characters which they utilize to cast spells, activate magical equipment and keep the spells or magical equipment active. Mages, wizards and other magic-oriented classes often have massive mana pool or longer mana bar. PvP. PvP literally means player versus player. PvP encompasses combat events between player characters. It may be in the form of a duel or group fights. Most MMORPGs encourage PvPs by featuring competitions, while a few others attach huge consequences to player versus player combat. In many LitRPG books, player killers are given harsh penalties. P-Curs on the other hand is known as player killers. Most times P-Curs kill other player characters in order to loot their corpse to collect their valuable belongings. Many player characters in LitRPG books create their own playing style around killing other player characters. Next on the list is NPC. NPC stands for non-player character. They are characters that are usually generated by the system. In video gaming terms, an NPC is a character controlled by the game's AI, with the developers programming each NPC to feature a selection of in-game behaviors to create their personality and enhance the storyline of the game. These characters are coded to give predetermined answers and dialogue. In some LitRPG books, NPCs are not in any simulated game but real people in our own actual reality instead of the virtual one. In this scenario, NPCs are indigenous members of that society or universe, while the player characters are foreigners or outworlders. DPS. DPS literally means damage per second. It means how much damage you can put out. DPS is usually a role you can play in group settings. During group raids, some player characters within the raid devote their efforts in dealing massive amounts of damage on the enemies either from range or in close quarters. Next is AoE. AoE translates to area of effect. It is a skill that can cause damage to a wide range of area. AoEs can hit all enemies or allies depending on the skill, within a certain range. It is usually used when the enemies are numerous. Magical spells are often employed as AoEs. Up next is aggro. Aggro simply means aggression. This is a typical reaction of mobs to trespasses in a dungeon or faction area. Mobs become aggressive to players or player characters when they enter their territory. Next acronym is crowd control. Crowd control is the use of a skill to control the behavior of a player or NPC. However, the victims of this skill are usually mobs. These kinds of skills blind, silence, confuse, stop, immobilize or incapacitate their target for a limited time to allow for the control of the battle. Let's talk about tank. Tank is a LitRPG acronym for warriors who can dish out a lot of damage to the opponent and withstand a lot of damage in return. They are usually at the front lines of any battle. KOS. KOS means kill on sight. It is a feature of LitRPG interface. It appears like a list where enemy names are archived and also a system reminder when the enemy is within the proximity of the player character. DOT, damage over time. DOT is a term for dealing continuous damage on an opponent from an attack. For instance, affliction and bleeding attacks sustain damage over time. HOT, heal over time. Heal over time is usually a healing spell or portion that heals the player character by a certain amount or percentage for a predetermined amount of time. Let's talk about buffs. Buffs are skills or spells that gives temporary bonuses to the player or to allies such as armor, speed, health regeneration boosts, etc. These can be passive buffs or time-limited skills. While buffs grants temporary bonuses, debuffs manifest in reverse. Debuffs are temporary penalties to player characters by reducing any or all of their stats within a duration or proximity. They usually result from auras, cursed artifacts, mobs, villains, or spells. Sometimes debuffs can cause stunning effects. Examples are speed, health, movement debuffs, etc. Next we have mount. A mount is a horse, griffin, or other rideable animal that can convey player characters from place to place. Mounts are also used during battles. Up next is farm or farming. In a typical LitRPG world, farm is any place where experience points can be obtained or cultivated. Experience points are usually obtained from killing mobs, and mobs are often found in dungeons. Therefore, the stationary nature of the mobs and dungeons makes it an ideal farm where player characters can gain experience points without searching constantly for mobs in the LitRPG world. Other sources of experience points are usually far-fetched and indirect. Farming is a more direct approach of obtaining experience points. Lastly is LOS. LOS means line of sight. It's an acronym usually used during raids. It is also used in clan chats when making reports about missions and targets. Thanks for watching the video, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel.